Good morning and welcome to this session for Innovation in the Air, where we talk about the value equation. My name is Deepak Ramanathan, and I'm Vice President for the Global Technology Practice here in SAS. And thank you for your time, your attention for this particular presentation. Our objective in this presentation is talking about what is the total economic value. And you will see this word coming up, the sentence coming up all the time, which is around what is total economic value, or TEV. Our objective is to look at how we project and calculate the value of investments in cloud analytics and AI. I'll approach this by sharing how we calculated the projected total economic value across all aspects of infrastructure, operations, and business outcomes. It's clear that investments in cloud analytics and AI are being made across many organizations. And those investments are both in technology and in talent. But how do you, as a business leader, know the investments you're making will pay off? And how should you look at that business case, both before and after making those decisions? If you're an existing SaaS customer, we'll also explore how you can start assessing your current SaaS footprint, empowering yourself to know exactly what you have, how it's being used, and how you can use that information as a critical baseline to help prioritize future advancements in AI and the cloud. And most importantly, I will share some examples of customers who have taken this approach and the results that they have achieved. The manner by which we recommend you look at total value crosses three distinct pillars, covering where you do your work, the infrastructure, how do you do your work, which is the operations, and what do you gain or preserve from that work, which is outcomes. You will see these three pillars being referenced to across this presentation, and these are great guidelines in terms of understanding how you have to look at your AI and cloud investments. In each of these areas, there are some unique challenges and opportunities to consider. Within infrastructure enablement, we need to be looking for opportunities in optimizing infrastructure and workloads, and the costs, benefits, to migrate those workloads, whether that be a full migration to single cloud, multi-cloud, or hybrid on-premise and cloud infrastructure. Additionally, availability and uptime quickly becomes a very key aspect of that decision. I cannot emphasize how important it is to understand the cost challenges around it. Our customers across the globe, as they have taken their cloud journey, have now realized that cost management, cloud cost management, continues to be absolutely critical. Absolutely critical. Similarly, the operations areas, this will lean into how models are being deployed and managed with regards to the use of automation, artificial intelligence, and the increased productivity that cuts across your analytics team, your IT, and how the business accelerates operational movements. This is equally important. And the reason it's equally important is because your modeling operations tend to be a very complex piece of application. So it's one thing when you're building these statistical models, the true value comes in for customers when they are able to operationalize these models, when they're able to manage these models, they're able to govern these models. And more importantly, they're able to drive revenue from that investment that they do in cloud and AI. The third, right, is the most important one, which is the business outcomes. Business outcomes digs into the impact realized from the use cases that are important to your business. And there may be many, many use cases that might be important to your business, whether that might be detecting fraud, improving equipment yield, optimizing your supply chain, or just improving the customer experience. The area of business outcomes is ultimately why most of you are attending this session with SAS. So let's start and dig into these pillars, and let's look at on basis of a customer who based a lot of their decisions on investments in cloud and AI on these three pillars. So digging into this first pillar around infrastructure enablement, we will typically focus in on the total cost from a CapEx and an OpEx perspective. What is the cost to acquire and operate something today versus the cost to acquire and operate something in the future? And what does that look like over a period of time? You want to consider both security of your data and system availability as you compare the current state to a future state. In Korea, this is all the more important as you start looking at data sovereignty, as you start looking at security, and as you start looking at understanding how these environments are actually set up. In this client example, let's take a look at what the client example is. A commodity management firm dealing in food and feed ingredients, we're looking into the economic impact of their current on-premise operating cost versus their investment into cloud analytics. In this case, moving to Microsoft Azure, their current 3-year infrastructure costs were just around $307,000. And as they assess the cost in the cloud, these costs were reduced to $140,000, which amounts to a 54% reduction over a 3-year period. That is a phenomenal savings, especially as we go into a world where we have higher levels of inflation, where cost of commodities are increasing, and more importantly, our ability to manage those costs become absolutely important. Additionally, in the same account, by way of uptime and resiliency, their service level or infrastructure uptime would increase from 98 to 99%. Now, a lot of people in this audience might try and figure, well, what is that 1% going to do? How important is that 1%? Now, this might not seem like a big bump, but when they looked into the cost to the organization, when the system is down, 1% downtime equated to close to $475,000 over a 3 period. That 1% lost opportunity is recovered with this particular cloud solution. So these are the advantages when you start looking at it from an infrastructure perspective. Key things: you're trying to reduce TCO, optimize on your hardware, build better efficient operations, and more importantly, better availability and throughput of the cloud performance. So let's take a look at the second pillar, right? But before we do that, here are the benefits that the customer gets between year 1 and year 3. So you're looking at a year 1 saving of $214,000. By the 3rd year, that's going to be close to $642,000 over a 3-year period. So if we move on from infrastructure and we move beyond infrastructure, now let's look into the impact to the operations. Operations are largely driven by productivity in 3 areas, right? So any analytics team essentially does the following activities. They do data preparation, and then they do analytics modeling. And then the analytics modeling today is done using different programming languages. And then finally, it's a question of deploying those models into production and monitoring them. Monitoring them is absolutely key. For IT, it's about reducing the productivity debt related to managing a diverse analytics environment and the work associated with recoding those models so they will run in their operational systems and ensuring that they have proper governance around them. Why is this important? If you look at, again, as I mentioned before, if you look at the scenario that we are in right now, the, the, the pandemic has absolutely changed people's behaviors. We have had lockdowns, we have had stores shutting down. Behavior has completely changed for customers, not only from a retail perspective, but also from a consumption perspective. It becomes incredibly important to understand when these changes are taking place, understanding the change has taken place, and recalibrating these models to account for these changes that have taken place. So as I was mentioning, for the business, it's about the probability and the productivity gains that they come from having data-driven insights at the time in which they can make an impact. For the business that, again, is seeing enormous amounts of competition. So no matter what business you are in, you're essentially driving two areas. You're driving productivity innovation or product innovation, or you're driving services innovation. And for both of those two to happen, it is so important to make sure that you get your models, the IP that you have built in building this asset, get it into production so you can start monetizing case. In this case, the customer, the commodity management firm, spent a significant effort on model deployment and model management, particularly with their IT department in managing these resources and these activities. Upon investigating hosting options with SAS, as in SAS Cloud, and using VIA to drive more automation is key, and governance, they were able to conservatively define a reduction in 50% reduction in time spent from their current processes. Upon reviewing opportunities to apply automation, AI, machine learning, the productivity and reduced effort opportunity was assessed to be somewhere between 60 to 80%. This is a stunning number. This reduced effort affected not only SAS users, but also open source data scientists, who now find it easier to compare multiple open source models and SAS models on the same integrated platform and deploy champions models into production with increased levels of usage. This is critical because now you can manage and govern your open source models, your SAS models, other models conforming to standard model deployment patterns in one consolidated and integrated platform. There are huge efficiencies in it, right? And the SAS capability in being able to provide customers this flexibility and this functionality of being able to take not only SAS models, but open source models of any vintage, right? And being able to manage them, govern them, are absolutely critical. So if you look at it from an accelerated operations perspective, the time to value in terms of getting these models into production and therefore monetizing them, and the administration from an IT perspective in being able to manage all of these models very easily from one centralized interface becomes incredibly important. The savings, as you can see, for year one was anywhere between $3 to $3.3 million. And if you extrapolate that to 3 years, it's anywhere between $9 to $9.9 million. This total result was an average productivity benefit of $3.3 million a year. This is a massive time and cost savings that can be redirected to fuel innovation. It means you can use these savings to start building better models. And these models can then help you, as I had mentioned a little while back, on product innovation and services innovation. These are absolutely critical to any organization. Now, let's look at the third and last pillar. And this is the most trickiest one, right? Which is the most important to the business, which is around business outcomes. It's one thing having the infrastructure. It's one thing being able to operationalize the content, but then realizing the business outcomes becomes incredibly important. This is why analytics and AI exist. And this is the primary reason why all of you and your organizations are so interested in this topic, which is how do we monetize on analytics? How do we help analytics to serve business outcomes for our organizations? Working with this customer, we together established a value review to investigate the business outcomes of the solution across various important areas they were looking to improve with analytics. For them, these were the key areas for business outcomes: customer retention, making sure that the customers stay with the management firm, with the commodity management firm. Customer experience is equally important for them. The trade propensity, crop prediction, forecast accuracy. These were the business outcomes that this customer was specifically looking at. This is the area, business outcomes, that most differs by each customer. And this is where AI spreads out within multiple lines of businesses and multiple industries. I'm sure each of you have very unique areas, whether you come in from the financial services industry, insurance industry, if you come in from manufacturing, telecommunications, even government, right? You all will be having some very unique cases in there. So if you look at what drives business outcomes, you look at the value in this pillar, there are two areas to consider: value acceleration and value preservation. Acceleration by how this investment is helping to drive efficiencies and bring innovation to life faster. Preservation, on the other hand, is maintaining the integrity of models and minimizing that diminishing drift that will occur over time. Let me explain this a little more, right? So by value acceleration, what we're essentially looking at is how can an organization start building out these business outcomes to, like I said, drive services innovation, product innovation, and get that accelerated value in there. The value preservation is once you have got that monetization, you are able to predict the right customer to retain. You're able to predict the right trade propensity to have. You're able to predict what crop output you're going to see, and you're able to forecast in this uncertain world what that crop output is going to look like is critical, right? And that's where the value preservation comes in, because to maintain, not only being able to build models to predict these, but being able to preserve and continuously fine-tune those models is absolutely critical for a lot of our customers. So what does that entail in terms of savings? So from a value acceleration perspective, all of these combined for this customer with very conservative estimates apply drive somewhere between a 2.5 to 5% improvement across the areas they target, resulting in a revenue upside of $2.3 million for the first year alone. I mean, these are the tangible benefits that a customer would get in terms of making sure that those business outcomes are indeed met. So let's get all of these let's get to these three pillars together, which is infrastructure enablement, accelerated operations, and business outcomes. So when we pull these three areas together, the 3-year aggregated value to the organization of modernizing that analytics environment ranges from $12.9 to $17.4 million, right? That is an enormous savings for those customers. just looking at these three pieces. And you, like we mentioned, for infrastructure enablement, we're looking at $214,000 in a year. For accelerated operation, around 3.3 to 3.3 million over 1 year. And for business outcome, anywhere between 1.1 to 2.3 million over 1 year. This is incredibly valuable for customers. So this was the commodity of management firm, which is the total economic value for them. Now, there are some incredible numbers that you see in this slide out here, right? And in this case, it's a larger company in the healthcare business. A very few unique things about this customer that I'll point out, beyond just the sheer large numbers that you see in there. One, on the infrastructure side, they were in a unique migration scenario where they were embarking on ultimately decommissioning a number of legacy applications. And there was a substantial cost to continue operating those applications. So you can see that that was part of the TCO assessment. Now we have, in the SaaS world, we have a lot of customers who are currently using a lot of traditional statistics and modeling from SaaS and are now moving over to the newer world of AI, machine learning, and areas around that space, right? So just modernizing their existing infrastructure and starting to move into these new areas, as you can see, has benefits, anywhere between $157 to $302 million. Significant opportunities there to realize productivity gains with the technology capabilities that they're looking to acquire from SaaS, primarily SaaS Fire. And these were the things that I was talking to you about a little while back. How do I make my existing applications run faster? How do I use newer techniques, newer capabilities that are coming as part of the AI, machine learning, algorithm base, right? And most importantly comes the business outcomes. The business outcomes assess across their strategic goals for this healthcare firm, current limitations, and the value enablers and accelerators based on where the customer, the client wanted to focus. And there were lots of areas that they wanted to focus on. So we actually ran a pilot initiative with them to test out some of these hypotheses as well, validating some of our own assumptions. And as you can see, the projected total business benefit over 3 years is anywhere over 157 to $302 million. Right. So as you can see, when you start looking at your AI machine learning investments along these three pillars, you're able to then better quantify what your costs and the benefits are going to be. And that's what the business leaders are going to look at. Business leaders are looking at essentially, how do I continue to innovate, but at the same time, ensure that I have the right cost mechanisms and controls in place to make sure that I'm innovating, but at the same time, I'm generating revenue for the organization, or what we call the business outcome. So there are a few takeaways I'd like to highlight from hundreds of these assessments that we have completed. And SAS has been doing these assessments for hundreds of companies across the globe. And we'd be more than happy to talk to you about some of our experiences around these assessments. What are the experiences? What are we talking about? Number one, infrastructure is a great place to start in assessing potential savings. And it's the most straightforward one, since you know exactly what your spendings are on infrastructure, whether it's on-prem, and you can also have projections that you can oftentimes feel very confident. There's less art to it, and it's more science when you look at the cost of a system or a cloud vendor standard SLA. These savings or these TCOs that you can have are something that you can touch and feel. because it's that straightforward. Like I said, it's not an art, but it's more science, because a lot of the infrastructure costs have also become very, very transparent. Second, you really cannot underestimate the potential in operational savings when it comes to increased productivity. Time and time again, as we work with clients, there's so much opportunity here with automation, better models, ease of which to deploy, manage, and govern these models. And certainly, when some customers decide on a hosted managed service, they'll see even greater potential gains. But productivity is critical, right? Productivity, especially in the analytics world, productivity is critical. And more importantly, rather than building the really nicest model, the most accurate model, I think the emphasis a lot on how do you deploy it? How do you manage it? How do you govern it? Those are critical things that get solved as part of the accelerated operations. The third and most important is that business outcomes. In the end, you're driving your business, right? From value acceleration, value preservation, you're driving outcomes for the organization. And like I said, as part of the innovate process, this is absolutely incredible because it not only helps you to drive your business bottom line, right? But also in many cases, the top line. Analytics, AI, machine learning leads to several outcomes. But the most important outcomes are around product innovation and service innovation. That is critical. So I would request all of you who are listening to this to start looking at your total cost, your total value that comes in along these three parameters. Now, if you are a SaaS customer, right? Those of you who have SaaS and likely will have for many years. Another useful part of this value equation is understanding what you have. It's absolutely important to understand what you have, how are you consuming SaaS, and what is your overall cost in maintaining a SaaS infrastructure, and how do you move that to make sure that it's cost effective and at the same time it's performant when you move to the VIA platform. So for those using SAS 9, we have developed a free content assessment tool to aid in this understanding. This application provides a wealth of information about your current SAS 9 environment, and it helps you accelerate your path to VIA. Right? How it works is your analytics or IT team downloads this free application, runs it, and then we provide an interactive visual report that outlines all your inventory, whether it's with what reports do you have, what programs are you running, what data do you have, frequency of data, who is using it, how often do they use it, and it also identifies if all of your programming code can move over to VIA. Again, this is all free and available as a download on our support site. We encourage you to share this QR code with your analytics or IT teams so they can begin their own assessment. Before we wrap up, I'd like to share one more impact study that was externally done by Forrester. In this study, they benchmarked SaaS VIA customers on Microsoft Azure. There were several of our customers they engaged independent of SaaS and Microsoft. This slide is a snapshot of the value realized after they implemented SaaS VIA on Microsoft Azure. These are not projections, but actual results. One important point I'd like to highlight is that when Forrester does these studies, they focus on only on two pillars, which is infrastructure and operational benefits of running SaaS VIA on Azure. What they don't include is the business outcomes value, what we spoke about, as the use cases do vary so much between one organization to another. Our experience, however, shows that the business outcome is usually the biggest driver of value. And as we discussed, it's almost the most important catalyst of why you would make that investment in AI and machine learning. As a follow-up to this event, we will provide all the attendees this Forrester report in a follow-up email. And with that, I would like to thank everybody in this audience for listening and participating in the SAS Innovate event. Thank you so much for your time. Have a wonderful conference, and thank you for all your support to SAS. Have a wonderful day ahead of you. Thank you so much. Bye.